All right, folks. We've been here for a couple of hours. We've got this is the second last interview of the afternoon. I'm pleased to welcome Christine Willig, who's the president of K-12 education at McGraw-Hill. Christine,
hi,
Chris,
everybody.
Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
So we have an audience of folks on the internet. We'll also be archiving these things. I want to remind our audience we're on the Shindig platform. For reference point, we're also speaking live from sunny San Diego at the ASU GSV Innovation Summit.
Beautiful day here.
No, it's snow, it's hail. Don't tell anybody.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. You're doing fine. And I want to remind you also, you can ask questions either through text or if you've got a video camera, we may be able to elevate some for the 15-minute conversation with Chris.
Great.
So Chris, actually, I want to frame this conversation.
Okay.
As we were talking, I made a passing reference to publisher, and you quickly sort of virtually slapped my hands. We're not a publisher. We're a learning science company. Let's talk about the transition of what that means, substantively and symbolically. When you say McGraw-Hill, and others, I think, in the industry would say the same thing. We are not about manufacturing books any longer.
Right, right. And in fact, when it comes to manufacturing, we've never manufactured books. We work with printers who are professionals at doing that. Right. I think a great way to think about it is, what is it that is going to move learning forward? And since 2009, virtually every program in K-12 has had a strong digital component. So we believed in digital approaches to the learning. And over the last couple of years in particular, we've intensified our investment in adaptive technologies in platforms like nGrade and places where we can take formative assessment and tie it to instruction. And a microcosm of that is really powerful adaptive engines like ALEX or LearnSmart. So when we say we're not a textbook publisher, it's because one of the most negative attributes of a textbook is that when we ship it to a school district, we never know if they even open the carton, let alone open the cover. With technology and the advent of the work that we're doing in learning science, we can know not only if you're using the program, but often can know if children are doing better or worse, if teachers are growing in their practice, and if we're able to help teacher practice in the classroom. So the other aspect of learning science is programs like Everyday Mathematics, which are backed with 25 years of great efficacy data, direct instruction, open court reading, et cetera, where there's a lot of science in these pedagogies and curriculums, and we believe in driving the work forward, not from a standpoint of what's on a two-page spread, but what are children ready to learn? How do we know if they're on their appropriate learning trajectory and pathway? And are we providing appropriate data to teachers so that they can help children along that pathway? So that's a big, long answer.
Yeah, and I want to deconstruct some different parts.
Go for it.
So a lot of what you're talking about,
there.
One is personalization. In terms of adaptive learning, that in fact not all children learn the same, whether it's reading or mathematics or whatever it might be. Second part is the use of data as a feedback mechanism.
Yes. As
opposed to, I've had a number of conversations with folks about the culture in education where data traditionally has been used as a weapon, not as a resource. It's what you did not well, to how do we use data to do better, both organizationally and in terms of individual feedback. It's about the digital value and textbooks and print as static as opposed to interactive and richer resources as part of that as well, in terms of deconstructing three parts of it. So let's talk first about the personalization. I'm old enough to remember the personalization was when my teacher grabbed me by the collar. You're talking about something different.
Personalization, and especially in an adaptive world, means, well, we all learn differently. We learn at different paces and trajectories. And we all have different approaches to the learning, too. One of the criticisms of math education is often that we teach to an algorithm or a very linear way in approaching it, when in fact the goal of mathematics is to reason with numbers. And when children start working with numbers through a pathway, they could choose to go this way and another student could go that way, both of which are correct and both of which a teacher needs to be able to work with. Alex can understand.
I'm sorry,
it.
Alex.
Alex is our math adaptive solution.
Okay.
And it's used extensively in higher ed, and over the last couple of years also in particularly in 3rd grade through 12th grade. It's not appropriate for the real little ones. Right. But Alex is a very powerful way of understanding those trajectories and respecting that there's a multiple pathway approach to how we get through that learning.
Okay. We're getting some odd questions from the audience. I want to sort of do a little more groundwork before we start taking some audience questions.
Odd questions. Yes.
Audience questions.
Oh, audience questions.
My apologies.
I thought you said
no,
odd.
I've been in the booth.
I'm like, oh,
no,
odd.
I've been at this booth since 12 o'clock today. So
woo.
Yeah. So they've got me caged.
You sure you got enough water?
We're okay. There's the data side of this as well. You know, in one sense, you're not just aggregating the data from an individual classroom of, if you're lucky, 18 to 20 students. You know, if you're fortunate, maybe 20 to 25, and if you're living in the real world, sometimes upwards of 40 students, unfortunately.
That's right.
Because you're now aggregating across multiple classrooms within a district or even beyond districts, and the possibility of normative data that goes beyond just everybody on one floor in one building. That's right. It seems there should be a lot of power in that, and at the same time, you know, there's a training component of not just throwing out a data point.
Absolutely.
Which is not determinate, is not predictive, but it's building. You talked about narrative before. I'm sorry, Karen Cater was with us a moment ago, talked about narrative. There's a narrative around data which is often lost or is not even there in terms of understanding what these data points mean.
Right, right. You've had a lot of interviews today.
Yeah, I've had
clearly.
A couple. We're doing okay. I think we're doing okay.
So
help me understand, if I'm the teacher getting that, if I'm the school superintendent, you know, how are you building the narrative to provide insight, as opposed to just saying data point for, this is the data point for Casey, or this is the data point for Casey's classroom?
So you want to understand. So first of all, let me say one thing about data generally, and then I'll talk about it for each of those constituencies. All right. So number one, when McGraw-Hill talks about data, we don't talk about big data. Okay. Big data is a concept that we hear a lot in the world of retailing, in the world of banking. You know, knowing that Casey is ready to buy those really snazzy shoes on Zappos is all about a big data profile of a consumer. Learning is different than consumerism. Learning is about a small data moment. And the small data moment that is McGraw-Hill's focus is around the learning moment. The interaction between the instruction or the material and the child on their learning trajectory.
I want to clarify something, but the same tools that do big data analytics that the widget provider hopes will lead me to make a purchase of a product or service still can be used effectively in terms of understanding the learning experience of somebody, you know, age 8 to 58.
I would love for you to have an interview with one of our data scientists to talk about that in more detail than I know as in my role.
I know big data has very significant connotations.
Yes.
As it's been used within education and being used as others talk about the way it should be used in education, often by folks who don't have a good grounding in education.
Right.
But the big data, as you put it, Steve, they're doing it in consumer markets, and if we're doing it for national security, why aren't we doing it in education? It's just moving it over. And this is what I mean about the narrative and understanding the context.
I think part of the narrative that's a little bit different in learning is the complexity of understanding those neural pathways.
Right.
And I do think there are aspects of data science around data that would be applied to those learning moments. And then there are attributes that are going to be very different than consumerism. And I think what's highly appropriate for the McGraw-Hill moment is that our context has always been about learning and not about mass marketing. And that's what we're going to do. Okay. We're going to concentrate on learning. And that's why we're calling ourselves a learning science company, because that's where we've placed our investments the last couple of years around adaptive engines, around platforms, around formative assessment, and pulling and formulating instructional resources that work tightly in those feedback loops.
Okay.
Now, the earlier part of your question was about how does data actually translate into the classroom?
How do you provide that data to me, either about me as the individual student,
Right.
or to me as the teacher concerned about my classroom, or to me as the superintendent concerned about multiple teachers?
Yes.
Right. And the appropriate use of that data. Yeah.
And so there are three different levels to look at that, but let's start with the student. Okay. So in a program like ALEX, a student takes an initial assessment, and that assessment fills in a dashboard that we call the ALEX Pie. If you've never seen the ALEX Pie, if you go to the website, you'll see it. It jumps out at you. Throughout the interactions with ALEX, you will fill in your pie. And it will show the domains in the learning objectives that are working for you and the ones where you're gappy. Now, you'll have your own personal pie, which means the student has their own dashboard for what they're learning, and they get to see their progress, which is just like keeping score in a game. It's a whole lot more fun if you know you're keeping score.
Right.
Take that up one level. Now we go to the teacher. The teacher also has pie charts to review and see collectively where her students are succeeding or not. And then she can also look at her data dashboards down to the objective level and can see where 6, 10, 12 kids are struggling with a given concept. It's a great opportunity for her to pull together a small group, remediate as a group around a concept where they're missing. And she might also be able to see that Jose is off the chart and it has filled in his pie already around whatever domains she was seeing are critical, and she can accelerate him by opening up other parts of the system where he gets a
personalization.
Exactly.
Okay.
It isn't held back by her time. Time is absolutely the largest factor in a teacher's life when it comes to wanting to personalize, but the difficulty is time. I have a whole pack of kids, and it's hard for me to personalize.
Right.
You have to herd them together at times in order to be efficient, and that's life. But the technology can really help us with that personalization. Then at the district level, they can see where classrooms are struggling, where students are struggling, et cetera. So all set up through a series of data dashboards. We also have a strong partnership with Time to Know, where Thrive provides, our Thrive curriculum provides real-time classroom management, in which educators can see immediately as kids are interacting with the software who's falling behind, who's struggling, and who's accelerating.
I want to pick up on one of the questions that's come from the audience. I'm going to paraphrase this in the context of a conversation earlier today with the president of Teachers College.
Okay.
And that is, how aligned is the training that goes on in teachers' colleges, not just Teachers College Columbia, but teachers' colleges in general,
Anywhere,
with the kind of tools that you're providing at this point? Are they aligned? Are they unaligned? Is this sort of something that I learned about? If I'm a teacher who's been working 20 years, obviously it's an after the fact. But if I'm a younger person or somebody going back brand new of whatever age, because it's not just 22, 24-year-olds.
But let's call them rookies.
Yeah,
right?
Great. Right? Perfect term. So if I'm a rookie at a state college with a teacher, I want for teacher training, or any place else, how aligned and how much will I understand about the tools that you're bringing that I'm going to find in a district someplace?
I think this is a difficult disconnect for our industry. If there's one,
how do you connect it?
Well, let me start by first acknowledging the disconnect, which is that I do hear consistently that superintendents are frustrated about the end product that's coming out of teacher colleges. Is that a newsflash for you?
No.
Okay, so I'm not telling tales, and I'm not picking on teachers at all. I think that it's been difficult for districts, for teachers' colleges, to keep abreast of all the changes going on in curriculum. And so they concentrate on methods, but don't necessarily get involved in the everyday aspect of implementing a curriculum whether it's an adaptive tool like Alex or a really robust, efficacy-based pedagogy like everyday mathematics. So I think that what would the
if I may, but
solution
teachers' colleges are not unique in that way. I mean, if you look at engineering schools,
exactly.
we talk about the half-life of an engineering degree as being about 5 years at best. Whether you want to call it the innovation or if you want to call it the gap in terms of what happens in professional practice as opposed to what happens as part of that formal training for the rookies,
right,
is significant and could be huge depending on the school, the program, the context, lots of different things.
And I mean, I think it's absolutely one of the reasons why there's so much teacher professional development that is done and needs to be done. My company does thousands of hours of professional development, and we've developed a really strong professional learning environment for as much online, short snippet video, quick starts, how to get started with this program, what to do with when these problems arise, children can't add fractions or whatever it might be. You know, what might be a solution for the gap between real-time classroom practice and teacher college might be a more mentorship for those early classroom teachers working with the curriculum. B, it might be how do we get some of these curriculums into the teachers' colleges. You know, if they want to call me and talk about it, we can.
Should we post your number on the web?
Please no.
Okay.
But
email it.
But we'll find a way to get that done. But I would also add that the teachers' colleges, maybe there's a way we can start to create some badging or certifying around particular curriculums.
Actually, we just had one of our folks who was in earlier was talking about badging that process.
Because I do think, you know, remember years ago when you had to get sort of Microsoft certified
right, same
in
idea,
Office?
same model.
Yeah, what we find is we go out to implement, and we end up doing a certification of sorts. Yeah. But it would be better if we built rubrics around it and really had some follow-through.
I want to be conscious of time, but I got one question I
really
want to ask. Yeah, so many things to talk about.
Yeah, so much excitement at McGraw Hill.
How digital is the curriculum in K-12?
It's something.
I hit the wrong.
The engineer just poked his head around the corner.
All right.
Hi, everybody. We're back.
My apologies. I was reaching for the wrong thing.
User error right over there.
Right on this side of the table. How digitized is the curriculum in K-12 these days in terms of moving towards a product as opposed to books?
Everything we've created since 2009 it has had a complete digital component.
I'm not asking about supplements, but I'm talking about how much has digital supplanted, not supplemented, what used to be the textbook that was ubiquitous.
You know, ironically, McGraw Hill continues to grow.
Yeah.
And what I find is that we have a really strong role in the core basal world.
Yeah.
Because what we find is that districts who experiment with other ways of approaching curriculum, whether it's through third-party supplemental resources or open
one-to-one programs
resources,
and tablets and everything else.
Yes, they still like to have a back structure. So they may buy Glencoe Math entirely digital with no print. Great. I'm thrilled to let go of some of the print. And we're building next generation solutions that will be targeted specifically towards you know, a blended environment. But what we're really seeing is that print will continue in some way, shape, or form.
For the foreseeable future?
Districts like it. We still see a tremendous amount of print.
Faculty more comfortable, teachers more comfortable with it?
We're doing research right now. I don't want to presume that we're doing research right now around what we consider what is purposeful print and what's purposeful technology. Okay. There's been a big mushy up blend of that over the last few years where technology is cool and exciting, but it's not really driving outcome. So how can we drive towards our purpose, which is student outcome?
Great. Chris, thanks very much. That helps a lot. Christine Willig, my apologies.
Willig. That's okay.
Yep. And President of K-12 Education at McGraw Hill. Thanks for joining us. All right.
Thanks, everyone in TV land.
And my apologies for pressing the wrong button. We've got one last conversation today with Rahim Rajan from the Gates Foundation. We'll be right back with Rahim.